well.
Okay.
So maybe we can get started because I know we probably want to log off maybe a little bit earlier.
Yeah. Okay. So the
Very
recording
cute.
is going. So
Yay.
we're
I love
now
it.
on for the now on for the tower, and of course I've got somebody's going through a tower moment right now on my texting me as we're speaking.
Mm,
So, but
I feel like the tower moments, I had a lot of tower moments earlier, definitely earlier in the year. Um, and I feel like I've been in one long continuous tower moment. Have you ever felt that way? It's like I just feel like I've been one long continuous tower moment.
but as we'll see from the cards, there's different interpretations, different ways to approach the
Attitudinally,
tower.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, let me switch over. Where am I? Switch over. Kind of like the devil, right?
Yeah. I mean,
You
so
want me to
the
go ahead and let me look at the all right, let me look at
so I mean the obvious parallel or the image of the tower, of course, comes from the Tower of Babel, and the midrash associated with that is that essentially what happened in the construction of the Tower of Babel is that the value that a brick became more valuable than a human life, and so that when a brick would fall from the tower, people would weep, and but when a person would fall, they just, oh, it's just a person, we can replace a person, so that that's what ultimately led to the divine uh, destroying of the tower, and so that points to this idea of what ultimately leads to a tower moment is placing our faith or our energy, our identity, value into something that is not valuable, or is something that is not where we should place that value. you know it's like the Bhagavad Gita says, to do someone else's to follow someone else's path is dangerous. To better to follow your own path imperfectly than to follow someone else's path perfectly. So what leads up to the tower is essentially following someone else's path, or not, or following a path that is not for you.
well at the end of it, at the end of the sort of the lightning flash for me in this one example was that I was able to come away with that. Um, basically saying these are not my people, and not that they're not valuable people, not that they aren't good people, or not that they aren't doing their service to what it is that feels right for them. It's just that I realized at that point that these were not my people, and then ultimately I was walking somebody else's, or attempting to walk somebody else's path perfectly rather than my own imperfectly. And that could very well be that leading up to that other people's expectations. So I'm thinking about the number of students. I just have, not a whole lot, but a few of students that have come to my office and have said, you know, my dad's a lawyer, my grandfather's a lawyer, his
Mm,
grandfather was a lawyer, and now I'm supposed to be a lawyer and I don't want to be a lawyer. And I don't know how to, so I don't know how to tell them that I don't want to be a lawyer. And
yeah.
it's like, you better find a way, because you're going to be walking somebody else's path imperfectly, which is not what I told them, but along the lines of,
Yeah, I had a old friend of mine that I used to play D&D with. We actually would play D&D at his law firm, which is one of the top law firms in the town that I was in, the city I was living in. And huge, conference table that we would all play D&D on, and he was a partner in this firm, and his father had started the firm and everything, and he's like, look, man, he's like, I just do law because it's the family business. I'm a dad, he's like, I love being a dad. He's like, I would have loved to been an engineer. He's like, I just do this because it's the family business, you know. So
Yeah, and I mean, some people are good at sort of rolling with that, and others,
yeah.
at some point, there's a break, right? There's definitely a break, either a psychic break of some sort, or um, either way you go, those breaks they're significant. I think I've heard a couple you guys talk on a couple different occasions about following sort of a religious path, thinking that that was the right religious path for you, right? Or going into Christianity or something like that. Or did I mishear? Or you keep coming
I,
back to a certain kind of path?
I mean, for me, it's like it's almost as if I have to do, to really encompass sort of all the aspects of my personality. I have to do more than one at one time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it gets more complicated, it gets more
Yeah.
complex, and more
Well,
nuanced.
I don't adhere to religions per se
Yeah.
anymore. So yeah, I
Well,
was
like at one point, did you? I mean, I know I certainly did, but I don't know if that.
yeah, growing up and after, when I tried really hard
Mhm.
to go with the right people and be the right things, like go to Community Bible Church in Bulverde and woohoo, and it just didn't work for me.
You're like,
And I'm here with you guys today.
no.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I can embrace the Bhakti tradition. I can embrace Gaudiya Vaishnavism because there's room in there to because there, you can also embrace certain aspects of Christianity, or I have a friend who's a longtime priestess, in one of the temples, who is a very accomplished tarot reader. So there's and of course that's tarot is not orthodox in that tradition, and certainly but there's I don't think that I could ever fully embrace a religion in the orthodox sense, but
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I feel comfortable in lots of different places, but I mean comfortable not because all of the doctrine resonates with me necessarily, but because I am, I think, plastic enough that I can find the divine in all of these different places, right? By plastic, I don't mean, I mean flexible enough that I can find the divine in all of these places. I was having a conversation with a dear friend of mine, and we were talking about Christians. This particular friend is very, very, doesn't trust Christians or Christianity much, right? It's been a very sort of damaging experience for her, and she's seen the damage for extremist Christian views, right, or viewpoint, and she's seen those folks who have been damaged from that. And so I was talking to her about, I said, I've been really fortunate because I've met and have had amazing friendships and relationships with folks who identify as Christian, and they have a much more flexible and a much more probably progressive understanding of Christianity. I was telling her, I said, when I taught at Texas Lutheran University for a little while, I met some folks who in their theology department that were much more flexible and much more sort of, one could say, sort of progressive or liberal, right? Both of those I think would apply than anyone else that I had met. And so the point I was trying to make to her is she was sort of like skeptical. And I said, not everybody in every one, but these definitely, right? So to walk, they tried to walk the way that Christ walked. And so that's a very different kind of application of those principles than the way that we have sort of applied them in a Western culture, right? How many centuries later, right? So it's this thing where, so we had these sort of rich kind of conversation around that. And I can see, for me, there's not all, but certainly I'm comfortable in lots of different, in those areas where I can go in and participate, right? I'm not always comfortable in aspects of a particular religion, regardless of what it is, that has a kind of inflexibility around gender and who can serve, right? Who can serve the divine in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking with a pastor. I was on a conference with a pastor yesterday, actually, who was talking about, that she feels that it's a certain degree of sadness that the Black Lives Matter movement is not led by pastors. And, and I pointed out that the reason that it's deliberate. The reason that it's not is very deliberate, and that's because a lot of progressives in the Black church feel let down because the Black church predominantly is anti-LGBT.
Yeah.
Still, and the Black pastors who are not anti-LGBT have come over to UCC. So you have Otis Moss III, for example. It says we need to stop talking about the sacred lynching. When it talks about the crucifixion as a sacred lynching,
right?
And stuff like that. But
away from that, yeah.
I think a lot of times, with religious institutions in general, is when people have their tower moments regarding religious institutions, is when when stuff is discovered, like, for example, child abuse, or you find out you're in a lesser degree, something like you find out your pastor's been swindling your whatever it may be, but those moments that sort of pull back the curtain in a very, very drastic way. And you kind of have to reassess. I mean, I spent 6 months, actually, really, since basically right after the time that we started this class, up until very recently, really distancing myself from the spiritual community with which I identify most, because of something very traumatic that didn't happen directly to me, but finding out about it was very traumatic, right? So, I had to be like, okay, let's just pull back from this just for a minute and figure out, okay, this spiritual practice is very important to me. These beliefs are very important to me. This way of relating to the divine is very important to me. But how can I do that on a personal level in it the same way, and also, not associate myself with the aspects of this culture that would permit X, Y, and Z to occur. And I think a lot of people get there. And I think for a lot of people with Black Lives Matter, for example, their answer, at least in the short term, is, okay, we're not going to identify ourselves with the church and so on. But if you talk to people who have been involved in Black Lives Matter protests, even pastors who've been on the ground at Black Lives Matter protests, they say, this is church. This movement is church. This movement is, so yeah.
It's yeah, and I think that is, I have a number of really dear friends that we're still friends to this day from high school. We lost touch for a while, and then we came back, and lo and behold, some of them are very, very fundamentalist Christian. And there's a kind of an inflexibility that not in all things, but in some things, right? That there's this, and I just, it gives me pause, right? It gives me pause if you can't. It's just an interesting thing how that inflexibility sort of people wrap their identities. We were talking about the identities, right? Or your identity, you lose you disassociate with people, but you associate with the bricks of the tower, right? And I think
Right.
the
And
same
that,
kind of thing.
that's actually a perfect metaphor, because some people choose, quite literally, they'll choose their church building over their people. They'll say, well, I've got to be, or their political party or whatever it is, I've got to be loyal to this, or
I think it's an extreme idealism, right? So there's
yeah.
kind of oversimplified idealism. It probably doesn't feel oversimplified, or maybe it does. It's like, I keep life simple. This is what I believe. These are my values, and I'm going to
I
make
mean,
sure.
I've attended a Bible study at a very popular and prominent Baptist church in Dallas, for example, that the teacher of the Bible study said,
Drop it, please.
said publicly that you can't be a Christian unless you vote Republican.
Yeah.
Said that publicly.
Hi, boo.
So yeah, but whereas the Bible study that I attended this morning, we're making each other uncomfortable. That's part of what we do, is we make each other uncomfortable. There's 6 or 7 of us on the Bible study. We're making each other very uncomfortable because we're talking about, I'm bringing in Origen from the 2nd century, who advocates reincarnation, and and other people are, and then somebody else says, well, Origen was not very kind to women, which is true. He cut off his own genitals because he felt like that's part of why he wasn't sainted. But anyway, but and then it kind of got into this. And then the pastor, actually, who was on, was saying, I used to think that, I was brought up, and I used to think that Christianity was was like the only way, or and so, and she said, and then I attended a conference on mysticism.
Yeah.
And
all of a sudden you're like, whoa.
She's like, I don't think that way anymore. She's like, I heard from people from all these different traditions that were in touch with God, and it's
I think another friend of mine was talking about, she doesn't really consider herself witchy. I think to see her, just sort of like, she doesn't identify that way. Everyone around her sees it, right? She's like, I was telling her, I said, you just vibrate fae, you just vibrate fairy energy, right? It's this thing. I mean, she lives right behind there's a forest right behind with a river, and
yeah, I have a friend like that too. Yeah.
But doesn't identify that way. Her parents were both, her father, who is in his early 90s, is retired. He was a superintendent. He was a minister. He was a pastor, and then was part of administration for the religious affiliation that they were, that he belonged to. And she went off to Bible college for the first year and was traumatized by that. And then came back, and so she was talking about how she probably aligns more with the Christian mystics than she does with anything that we might consider to be, modern paganism or Wiccanism or anything along that kind of aspect. But I think it feels so familiar is because of this notion of the sort of the mystic approach. And so it was a very interesting kind, and she doesn't have these labels, she's not set in, none of these are set in stone for her, but she's kind of a moving target here because she's still sort of working through that because things are complicated. The more you know, the more you
Oh, yeah.
realize you don't know anything,
Oh, yeah.
right? And so this certainty that I think we all would like to have, I would like to have, definitely. There's certain days I want to wake up and I want it to be certain, right? There are days when I wake up and I roll out of bed and I'm like, oh yeah, I can feel that divine relationship and I can feel it, that my relationship with the divine is very, very strong, very present, all this kind of stuff. And there are days when I roll out of bed and I'm like, what happened? Where did it go? Like, I'm not feeling it now. I'm not, and I think that, so it's that, I don't want to say it's a moving target, but it is definitely fluid, right? In that sense.
Mhm.
Which I guess is why we have to renew the faith, right? Keep our faith in knowing that even if we don't feel it in that moment, that it's still there. And trusting that if that's for an extended period of time.
Well, and
Their friend.
that's what community's for. That's what association is for,
Yeah.
to
Well,
bounce ideas off of people and
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 it's
all that.
absolutely, which
And
is
to see
why,
that other people have doubts as well.
yeah.
Even people in quote unquote leadership positions, and things like that.
And their circle, I think, is even smaller, right? When you're in leadership.
Well, and I'm actually, my role in my church is I'm the head of the pastoral relations committee, which is basically that part of my role is a liaison between the pastor and the rest of the congregation. And there were some our pastor, this is her first week was last week, and there were some not major issues, but there were some things that came up, and I said to her, I said, you have a support network, right? I mean, you're good, you're good. You have, and she does. I mean, she has her husband plus, other pastors and so on. And so she has a whole support network, you know, so it's not like, she has to deal with whatever issue alone, you know.
Yeah, because you do. And I think that was it, the kind of strength. Like, okay, so yesterday, let's just talk about strength, right? Let's talk about the personality cards. Mary Kay Greer, like part of her career, not her career, but one of the things she's written about is sort of like she talks about like a birth card. This is, or a year card, that kind of thing. And what they are basically is there's a kind of, I guess, a numerology-ish kind of sort of equation that you work through. And essentially it's sort of it's an adding up, and then you keep adding until you get a number. So you take your birth year, your birthday, and your birth month,
Right.
and add those up, right?
Mhm.
We've seen this before. And then you
Yeah.
take the individual numbers and add those up. And if it's below, if it's 22 or below, what is it? If it's below 22, then you just hold the number, right? So, but if it's above 22, then you add those numbers together, essentially add the numbers together, and that's it.
Mhm.
So for me, the number is 8.
That's my number as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the strength card,
It's also Saturn.
Saturn.
Represents Saturn, which is
Yeah.
also corresponding to the tower, because you've got no, it's not. It's actually corresponding, would be corresponding to the star, not the tower, which is actually better in some sense.
Isn't it corresponding to the moon? Is the moon
Well,
18?
is the moon next? Is the moon after the tower?
No, it's the star.
The
But
star.
the tower, oh wait, the tower is 17. No, the tower is 16.
16.
So
Tower is 16. So 17 would be 1 7 or 8
1 7,
or
and
8.
that would be 8. But
Mhm.
so would the star also be in, or the moon also be involved in that?
No.
Okay,
No.
so it's 1 7, so it's the star.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Which is the card for Aquarius, which is very interesting that comes after the tower. So hope
so
comes
strength.
after the tower. Yeah.
Yeah, so strength
Yeah.
is what I felt that I really had to. That feels like that's been a big lesson, right? So I didn't
Well,
know
that's
all of this until sort of later on. And so
that's what
I watched that
Saturn,
yesterday.
yeah, that's what Saturn is about, is hard won lessons.
Yeah.
Um,
Wayne.
yeah, that's
Wayne.
yeah, yeah,
Because they certainly felt that way, right?
yeah.
But I think that getting back to this idea of community, you have community, and then the idea of in the middle of a pandemic, it was even more important that you had community, right? Because people were essentially isolated.
Well, and I found that
Not everybody, but a lot, yeah.
during the pandemic, my community shifted a lot too.
Hmm.
You know,
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's
I did too.
because I mean, the pandemic was a global tower moment.
Sure
Honestly, I mean,
was, yeah.
I mean, let's just frame it. I mean, yeah, basically, and unfortunately, I think it's going to be missed opportunity in some sense. There are ways that we could have handled it, that it's going to be better, right? I think it's less missed opportunity than 9/11 was. Like there are ways we could have come out of 9/11 that that we didn't. There were opportunities we did not take.
Yeah.
For example, had we not gone into Iraq, there'd be Starbucks on every corner in Kabul right now, and and Afghanistan would essentially be a protector to the United States at this point, because Islamic fundamentalism really didn't take off until we invaded Iraq, because the Islamic fundamentalists said, "See, we told you that the U.S. was going to do this." Because actually most of the Muslim world actually supported us going into Afghanistan. I mean, they understood that. They understood that. I mean, no, but the 20 almost 20 years in Iraq now, that's just
Let's go, hurry up. Come on.
a disaster.
Be right back, guys. I'm gonna go let him out.
Yeah, let's just pause the recording. Recording, yes. Okay, we have resumed recording. Okay. So, yeah, so the tower is just, and of course, and sometimes our lives just seem like one big, one big continuous tower moment. That's like no shit.
Well, I think probably, I mean, it's that, I think what's so, when people see the tower, or they get a tower in a reading or something like that, and how do you talk to others about the tower, and talking ourselves through a tower moment too, which is this idea of that it's hard to see it now, but ultimately this is good, right? And it's hard to see it now because we have so much invested in the structure, right? We've really invested in those bricks that built whatever that concept, idea, identity ultimately is. And then the tower is, if we can believe it's for a better good or higher good, the good that we can't quite see because we're doing this, right? We're sort of like, whoa, we're way too close to do it. I mean, that's which I love, the hope that it brings hope, right? At some point you move into that space. But I think that it's the thing that really I think is important, especially with any of these cards that are about, guess what? That signal a hard change, right? Or an intense, by hard, I mean intense change, is making sure that you take care of yourself during the process of that change in a healthy way. Because if you don't do that, then I think you can be stuck in that space. And it's hard to do it when you're stuck and mired in the middle of it, right? It feels as almost as if it's not quite the serenity that the hanged man has, right? And sort of just going to hang here and allow this change to take place. I think the tower is very active in that sense, right? Where and I should say this, it's not that the hanged man is not active. We know that that's active energy, but it's a much more introspective, active energy, where I think the tower, one can literally see how that's going to impact the physical world when that thing breaks apart, right? And so it feels more dynamic in that sense, although it's really about with the hangman, it's much more subtle, and with the tower, it's opposite of subtle. It's pretty. It feels big. It is big.
Yeah, it's like I have a dear friend who was an active alcoholic, and I mean not I mean when I mean active in like all capital letters, right? For over 20 years, and managed to actually do quite well at his various in his career and everything like that, but was just, I mean, his health, everything was going downhill. It was being taken to the hospital in the ambulance, that really, I mean, it was that moment that finally, and he's been sober for 8-9 months,
Yeah.
but it was being taken to the hospital, being forcibly taken to the hospital, that really was that moment that allowed for a tremendous amount of growth to come out of it.
I think that the denial can sometimes be a healthy coping, right? To an extent. But if it gets you into this place where things like this, right? Yeah, it's not healthy at that point. I think any kind of coping that's overused it runs the risk of putting you into a place where you bring yourself to such a state where only a tower moment's going to shake you from it, and make you sort of aware. Yeah, I mean that's intense, right? What's it going to take for people to shift or switch their patterns, right? Their choices.
Well, and I mean, I know that when I
Because,
almost died, when I ended up in the hospital in January on my birthday, and that was my birthday present to myself, was taking myself to the hospital because I was in that much pain. And yeah, it cost $2,000. So that was with insurance. It's $2,000. So, but the point being is that I had to reassess a lot, and it ultimately was incredibly scary, and I didn't know, but I was able to in those few days mend a lot of relationships and do things, because you really when you don't know what's going on like that, and you don't know how mortal something is or whatever, you do reassess a lot, and
yeah, there is something to be said, I think, for I know in some families they'll have, for example, they'll have rifts in their family and they don't mend until somebody's passed, right? And then all of a sudden they recognize or they realize, not in every family, but then they're like, well, why are we not? Maybe we should probably mend these, either forgive and move forward, or you don't have to forget, but be willing to reopen, be open to that. It's yeah, I think that right now, an in-law of my niece-in-law, her mother is really sick, is in ICU, and it brings down, and she's in her mid 40s and all of this kind of thing at that age where for many people are starting to have to reflect very heavily with their own mortality because they're seeing their parents. They're seeing their parents at that particular point, if they haven't passed already, the aging and the illness that is putting them to the place where they will be, right? That inevitability. And when you come to that on your own at some point, right, you've had either some kind of like illness, or you've had an accident that was so incredibly that sort of jars you. It is an opportunity to wake up. The tower is a wake up call. But it does force you to sit back and sort of assess. It's like, what is it? You talked about it earlier. What's my support system? Did I close people out of my life too hastily? Right? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. You know what I mean? Or sometimes like, oh, they still belong over here in this category. But for the other ones, you might kind of assess. The hope is that everybody has gone through enough, they've evolved enough that they might be able to reestablish those relationships, right? In a way that's healthy. That's the hope card, right? That's the star card. That's the star card. And thank goodness, I mean, to place the star after the tower, right? There is hope there. There is the glimmer. There's the beginning of that thing, right? So yeah. I've been processing a lot of, finally releasing emotions that I didn't make time to process in the last couple of years. And it's been a really interesting experience because it's, I know if you've practiced yoga or you have, worked with yoga at any point, this idea that you can move into an asana or you can move into a meditative state. Really, it doesn't have to be an asana. It can just be a meditative state. And all of a sudden something wiggles loose emotionally, some sort of emotion that has been trapped in a particular musculature, because unprocessed emotions just don't evaporate and disappear. They get stored. The brain's an amazing thing, and it stores it in just various different parts of the body, right? So it stores it in the tissue. Some they don't really understand, I don't think, fully how that happens, but they do know that there's this kind of the way the brain will store it. So if there's, so I've been working with a lot of these emotions as they've been, and literally, I was sitting in meditation the other day, and I'm using guided meditation right now just to get me back in. It's like a muscle that I haven't used in a long time, and using guided meditation to help me kind of get back into practice. And at the end it was a 20-minute meditation, so it wasn't too terribly long. But when you're out of practice, 20 minutes feels like a little challenging. And so at the end of it, I remember just sort of, that's that thing where we're all a little irritated. I was irritated with myself because I'm so out of practice, right? There's like nobody's fault. It's not a horrible thing. It's not a terrible thing. It's not the end of the world. It's nothing of that. But the way that, the ego works in such a way that it's like, you have better skills than this.
You have to be perfect, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
but that's a trap. That's the trap.
I know.
The ego saying that to you. If you buy into that, you're buying into the tower.
Yeah, you're buying a brick, right? Or you're recognizing that you have that's the brick in the tower that you got.
Exactly. You're trying to put that brick back in. Yeah.
It's like trying to make sure it doesn't fall out. So anyhow,
so at some point somebody's going to do a deck where they have Donald Trump's wall as the tower.
The tower. It's like here's the brick.
Yeah,
and different people's names on the brick. You know how you can buy a brick for a walkway in a campus somewhere. Well, so what happened is I felt in my heart, like literally had a feeling like in this heart chakra, this heart space, where I could feel like it. I don't know how to quite describe it other than to say that it became at a point at which I became aware that emotion, an unprocessed emotion, was making its way to the surface, and it was in my heart chakra. So somewhere in this heart center space is where this trauma, unprocessed emotion, whatever it is, heartbreak, probably a kind of disappointment, whatever, just sort of, and I just sat with it and allowed it to grow. There was part of me that wanted to resist, but then I made a commitment to lean into this because this is a healing process, and just to trust it. And it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew. Before I knew it, I was expecting to cry, but it was like that crying where it shakes the body, right? And so there are only a few ways that human beings can process trauma appropriately, right? Because if you're caught in fight, flight, or freeze, there's only a couple of ways. One of the reasons why they encourage exercise is because it's a way to burn off the extra adrenaline from the stress or whatever, the hormones that the trauma kind of releases. And one of them is through crying. Right? So it's another one. It's one of the reasons why you feel so much better after you cry, right? There's a reason why it's a release literally of those hormones. There's a point at which too much crying, then we need to kind of be, watch that. But for a process like this to kind of to cry, be done with it and be like, wow, and feel as if you've made that progress through. So I'm just trusting myself through all of this, right? Because the tower would have said, no, you can't cry. Don't you cry. Don't let those people win. Don't let the bastards get you down. The bastards would want you to cry, right? Or whatever. And what it really is it's like, no, that's about burning that, processing that emotion and ultimately releasing it. So in the doing of that, then you move into the star moment, right? And one of my favorite star cards so far is the Light Seers Tarot. I love that card. And so I love that particular version of it. And so it's been a really interesting journey these last few days, really. But the whole point of that is really to say that as you're moving through and struggling with wanting to keep the brick in the tower, that ultimately it's really okay and probably better for your higher good to let it fall. Right? And just let it go. And see, and so yeah, that's kind of where I'm feeling like some of those things are coming to surface. And that's a cool thing. There was another reason why I brought that up, but I can't remember it right now. My brain is not real sharp these last few days. I feel like because I've been doing a little more of this kind of releasing, my brain is just tired because
It's tired, yeah.
It's tired. And I'm like, whoa.
Because that's exhausting.
It is. It is. Right. I feel better, but it's going to take a while. And so remember that night that I sent a link out and I said, oh my gosh, this is like the best Hecate, like it was a guided meditation. I know you guys were all doing stuff, but I'd sent it anyway, because I think you might be able to go back and rewatch it if you want. But that was that piece that I was telling you about, the meditation with the heart, happened earlier in the day. And then later in the day, I did this guided meditation led by Cindy Brannon, who is actually, she's a PhD psychologist, works with depth psychology, and did a really beautiful guided meditation. And so she works with, primarily she works with Hecate, and the myths of Hecate and the lore of Hecate and the archetype of Hecate and all of this, and it's really beautiful. And so she basically took you through this guided meditation to Hecate's garden, right? And so she built a communal space. It was really beautiful. And we did all of this. And so we're imagining this, and I'm sort of walking in, she takes you through the gate or whatever. You see this area where you see the altar, the table, we all have something, we're contributing to it. And we're doing this all, of course, in a meditative state. We place it, and you see Hecate. And she appears to you in the way that, however she appears to you. And so part of the idea, one of Hecate's symbols is our keys. And so often, it's like, so we were working with an image earlier in the meeting where she shows an image of a person with there's a key, and then there's like the keyhole in the middle, and their heart chakra, right? And so you gave this gift to Hecate, and then Hecate was going to give you a gift back, right? And you imagine what that gift is. And before I knew it, so you're in this meditative space, in the Hecate meditative space, right? In Hecate's garden. And what she gave me before I realized it, before I even realized it, was a heart.
Oh.
So literally that heart thing, I mean, there was a heart that she gave me. She like gave me back the peace, where that piece where that trauma had been occupied, that piece in my heart for that long was now empty, right? Because I had released that earlier. So there was a space, and literally all day long, I felt like there was a hole in my heart, even though I'd released it. Later on that evening, that same evening, here is now a heart, right? To put it back in. So that's to me the tower and the star working in conjunction together. That's the whole reason I brought that up. And that's why it was like, I felt like I felt like I was healed in that moment. You know, we have these sort of healing moments, these spontaneous moments through meditation. I released it through meditation earlier in the day and then got this kind of piece back. So that's the taking care of yourself as you're moving through the tower. So that way the healing of the star can take root and flourish. That's at least what I got out of that experience, and trying to make sense of it as I've moved through it. But yeah, I think it's yeah, that's all I want to really say about that.
So the star, what?
The star was the healing, right? It was the hope.
No, you said take care of yourself through the tower so that something in the star.
So the star can really sort of flourish. You can flourish within the star energy, right?
Yeah, the star is, of course, the Star of Bethlehem is part of it. I mean, and also Venus. I mean, it's just the hope, right?
It's hope. I mean, I think that's how you can reduce it down to this concept of hope.
Yeah.
Right. The hopefulness of being whole and moving towards. I mean, the world is as much about ending a cycle as it is about a kind of completion. Is not just, oh, I'm done with this cycle, right? Completion is that there's a fullness fulfilled, right? There's this sort of fullness that you come full circle and you become this fullness in that cycle.
And I mean, you have to, if we want to go, like, if we want to use an agrarian metaphor, for example, like, and which we'll see some we'll see some nature.
We should do that next.
Cards.
Yeah.
But in order to plant, right, you got to break the ground first. You gotta break the ground before you can, put the seeds in and then have the growth. And so the tower is the breaking of the can be seen as the breaking. But I love, when you were talking and you did this, like because a lot of times we just won't. Our towers are so recalcitrant, right? Or that we just don't, la 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 la. I'm not listening to you when you're saying, and it's not until that divine lightning comes in and that we say, oh, this is what was keeping. And at first we think it's the worst thing ever, because we're like, it's like a divorce, like, especially if you weren't the party that chose it, if you weren't the party that chose it, and all of a sudden your partner of a couple of decades says, I want to go and do something else. Well, yeah, when you're going through it, it's freaking horrible. But like in my case, I'm 3 years out. It's like, actually, this is probably a good thing. This is probably the best thing that we could have done. Of course, we spent a lot of money and took certain steps to where we could remain friends and all of that. So it was a very queer divorce. Very very queer culture. Quote unquote enlightened divorce. But anyway. So yeah, it's like
it's the Deus ex machina, right? That sort of divine lightning, or that divine influence that comes in at the final moment before, because you just come out of the devil, right? That devil energy. If we're looking at the devil energy, I mean, there's some.
And the devil, just to continue on with that metaphor, the devil is, well, at least in my case, it was, well, I want to stay in I want to stay in this marriage because it's what I know, it's what I'm comfortable with. It's, I have this security, I have this and this and this, and we've built this, so yeah, but and so yeah, and again with the like we talked about last time, the chains that are there, but you can actually just throw off the chains, but you don't throw off the chains, you just keep the chains there.
I think more and more as we move through it, I think especially is through this series of cards where leaning on the tarot is a way to do a tremendous amount of healing, right? For those folks who lean on it as a way to kind of heal whatever needs to be healed. I think more and more that seems much more, first of all, plausible to me, and also some days preferable, right? In some circumstances and situations, really preferable. How do we do this? I was reading for a friend of mine this past weekend, and out of a result of the reading, she was able to go in and talk with the conflicted party, and they were able to clear the air and make that a better space, right? And this is because somebody really does take the tarot very seriously, and she takes it seriously, and using it as a way to help kind of bring some understanding. So you have a choice. Do you throw away a friendship, somebody you adore? They were also like working on a business deal together, and so that'll complicate things, right? If you're not really clear about this is business space, this is friendship space, right? And to keep those two things in some cases very, very separate, that's healthier to do. So it was, and it really, at the end of it all, I was incredibly, incredibly, incredibly pleased that she was able that happened, right? So took that reading as a way, not just as oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Because sometimes, right, just that, but to say, well, what can you do? And then just reached out. I said, talking to this person, and so did that. And it was, do I believe that she may have reached out and talked to this person without the aid of the tarot? Possibly. I don't know that. Right. But I do know that as a result of the tarot and incorporating the tarot into under deeper understanding, she then made a decision to reach out to this person, and they were able to clarify and clear the air and to make it a little bit better. So both committing to healing the situation rather than letting it fester and get worse and worse and worse, and each of them deepening into their own devil tendency, for example, or carving their names in those bricks, that kind of thing, right? For that to be the case. But it took when I say it took a long time, it was time well worth spent. But working with her, she's my friend. In that moment, she was my client.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Even though not a single cent exchanged hands,
Mm-hmm.
right? But still working with her as a client, simply because at that point, I'm better off advising her in that way than as necessarily a friend would advise her. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah. Ooh.
So these are our more traditional
Yeah.
views of the tower. I really like the tarot of dreams tower. I'm not very familiar with that deck, but
there are no people falling from it though.
I noticed that too.
Oh wow, you're right.
But clearly people built that, right? That was built with human hands. I guess that's true about all of them. Yeah.
Well, the people who live in that place had prior knowledge of the lightning bolt strike, and they've already fled to, where was it? Cabo or something.
Mm-hmm. They said
yeah.
They've got good forecasting.
The politician,
Ted Cruz, yes.
Yeah, they followed suit with him. I mean, look at that place. You have to be able to have your bag packed and your car ready waiting to drive you to the airport before the lightning bolt hits if you live in that tower.
Yeah.
That's my sarcasm for the day.
That's a great way though. That's a yeah, thank you for that though. Because I think you're right. I mean, because there's a kind of, they all have kind of an opulence or definitely a kind of wealth, but that one gets really articulated there, power and wealth.
Well, but what I like about that card is the sunbeams coming down. So, you know, all the other cards, at least on this page, you don't see that. And it's really showing the beauty of the tower, even in this moment of the lightning bolt strike. It's just highlighting that for you.
Yeah.
So that liberation that comes, that growth, that realization, that flipping your perception upside down.
Mm-hmm.
This card to me is in a deck where it would be able to be perceived in that much more positive light.
And it's really, it's obvious there. I think the tower card on the right has that break in the clouds that you see right there as the lightning strikes.
It's gorgeous. That's my favorite part of that whole card.
Yeah, I mean, that's that beauty of like, you know, here is this divine intervention that's coming in here and saying no.
Yeah, and it's not there yet. You don't even see the light really yet, but you will. But now in the card on the left, which is what, Robin Wood?
That's Robin Wood, yeah.
That is Doom's fucking day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's a break in the clouds, but it's a small one. Yeah.
There's a small break in the cloud up there, but yeah. And she can be very she can be very kind of gloom. She can be kind of gloom and doom a little bit. Like for example, her 10 of swords, like her you know, like her commentary on it is, this is bad. It's like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This is bad, you know, which of course that's not the only way to look at that card. But I mean, for her, it's, you know.
I love there is this, oh my gosh, in the Modern Witch deck, I think I've got to find it. I believe there's an extra card in there. Or I've seen a version of it. Maybe I'm confused.
Wait, Kurt, don't move yet, please. I didn't want to interrupt her, but two things. Tarot of Dreams is in the middle.
Yeah.
And that came off of your sampler.
Correct. Yeah, that's a sample.
What's the one on the right? The one with the tower that's not Robin Wood.
That's the Llewellyn's tarot.
That's Llewellyn?
Yeah.
Okay.
That it's just called Llewellyn's tarot?
Llewellyn, what is it called? Llewellyn Classic. It's called Llewellyn Classic.
Can you get it on Amazon?
Yes, you can.
And do we normally look at that in our?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't remember other cards out of that deck.
It's usually one of the first cards we look at, because it is very not Robin Wood. It's very Rider-Waite.
Well, so interestingly enough, everything is fine. What is that? Swords?
This is the 10 of Swords. This is an extra card in the Modern Witch deck.
Why is it extra? There's supposed to be a 10 of Swords, no?
Yeah, but it doesn't. Notice that this says everything's fine. And so part of the interpretation here is the 10 of Swords is there's a kind of histrionic tendency. It appears worse than it really is. And that is one interpretation that I've come across, that it's really not, it's not as bad as we sometimes make things out to be.
Right, but so what, are we just contrasting this with the tower?
He talked about the 10 of Swords, and that's why, like he was just talking about, gosh, what's her name?
Robin Wood.
Robin Wood. And
oh yeah.
So that's why I brought it up. I looked at it because I was like, you know, there is something about, so look here, let me show you. And we'll see this again when we get to the 10 of Swords, But see, here's this is the 10 of Swords, right? And then here is that additional card where it says, everything is fine.
Okay.
Which, again, this really plays on that sense of histrionics, right? Which is like, I'm making this out to be worse than it really is. Because she's clearly still on her cell phone.
I really don't know why you got to call us out, Denise. Come on.
I'm terrible. Isn't that, but it's that thing where I think that when he was talking about the different interpretations of the Ten of Swords, I see a lot of hope in this.
I missed that whole conversation, I guess.
And you see the same thing with the tower. There's different ways to look at the tower too. And
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think, well, for a good reader, we're going to look at the cards around it.
Sure.
Which, that part, you guys, it's coming, but it's different for me. And then depending on what deck I'm using, I think, and then with spirit guiding of what I feel it is. But it depends, but what I feel it is going to differ on which of those 2 or 3 decks I use too. Yes or no?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I liked was she talked about in here this week, that true, genuine symbolism is not limited, static, and these are my words, I'm just paraphrasing. It's not stuck to one thing, one meaning.
So I just kind of contract, because this is a fairly positive tower, at least in terms of the image. This is from the good tarot in the center, and so I just contrasted these two towers primarily because of the colors.
Well, the good tarot is the most positive one I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is in the good tarot, it looks like in every single doorway, there's light emanating from the inside.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about, Denise? That would be my part of the module? That kind of stuff?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
Details. So
Yeah.
my favorite job in the movies was script supervisor. So it's got to be all details, like details.
Oh, I didn't know you were in the movies.
That's my jam. And that's my favorite job ever, is doing script supervision.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of it.
It's fun. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, and then, you can, part of it is looking at those cards. And then we talked about how do you then develop an applied piece to it from an art perspective, if that's even something you're interested in doing. But yeah, that bringing to mind that there's light coming from each of the doorways.
I'm more about details and what I'm getting from that with art mixed in when it applies, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yay.
So what's this vampire deck?
I think you have this deck.
No, I do not have
that. Oh, you
deck.
don't? Okay.
I have a vampire deck, or maybe 1 or 2, but not that one.
Okay.
That is a powerful fucking card.
Yeah, I don't know really anything about the card or the deck. I was just putting it in to contrast this.
And is it called the Tarot of the Vampire?
Tarot of the Vampire, I believe.
And that's it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's really, so my first thought when I saw that was he's riding away from the tower that's on fire on the inside, but the tower is actually way back there in the background.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the tower was this building over here, but if you look at him.
Right, it's back here. And I mean, because it's a
building.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm wondering if it isn't one of those things where it's like picture in picture almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It reminds me kind of like a Black Rider from Lord of the Rings.
Yes, that's what it was reminding me of as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I was thinking of the Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman.
Yeah, that too. Actually, I was thinking that too. And so I'm wondering if, again, I don't know the context of the deck, but I'm wondering if this figure here is actually part of the culprit of making this, whatever this fire is or whatever.
Right. And the weird thing is if you look at the land itself in the side of the hill that he's riding on, it almost looks like there's either taken an impact of something or it's like a little cave that fire's coming out of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then it looks like the bushes in the front are all like the thorny brambles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then your Ghosts and Spirits tarot on the left, which I don't remember looking at either often, but you know what it reminded me of before I saw that it was Ghosts and Spirits was Shadowscapes.
It's similar, like the coloring is similar.
Yeah.
And some of the brush, like
Like in the top up there in the sky,
mm-hmm.
the trees and stuff. And yeah. Did you do Shadowscapes in this one or no?
Yeah, it's in there.
Okay, I didn't open that book. I normally do. And I didn't open it, but I did finish all the reading on here.
So these are more nature based.
Okay, so this is our light seers in the middle.
Yeah.
And do you mind scrolling up just a bit? Can I see the names of the other two decks? Oh, just from the Victorian
Tarot.
And is that one my deck that
Yep.
just gave me, Wildwood?
Yep, that's Wildwood. Both of which have oak in the name, blasted oak and burning oak.
So in this one, this oak tree is the tower.
Yeah.
And the oak tree got struck by lightning. And a person, which is a new concept because normally, traditionally, it's two people and it's female and male.
Mm.
So this tower moment from the light seers, is it a mound of dirt? Like, I'm confused.
I don't know, but I feel bad for the little forest creatures.
Doesn't it almost looks like like a tree?
Right.
Yeah, it looks like a tree.
With grass growing up it.
That's been sort of struck and all the creatures that lived in the tree. Like maybe even a dead tree. Well, it's not a dead tree, but it wasn't a dead tree necessarily, but a hollowed out tree.
Yeah.
Interestingly about these fairies that I just noticed is these fairies are not freaking out. I mean, they've lost their home, but they're pretty orderly in terms of like getting, because they have wings and so forth, they're kind of organized. So this is actually, I mean, they've lost their home, but it's very hopeful. It kind of reminds me of
Reminds you of what?
The art in this particular deck reminds me of Wendy Peeney's art in ElfQuest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Here's Shadowscape.
Okay, you guys, I'll get them. Y'all keep talking about the other two cards.
This actually reminds me of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, like the
oh yeah,
the houses in the little houses in the trees. I mean,
in his little Neverland.
Yeah. Oh, and look, it even has the castle like Mr. Rogers. Look, that's cool.
Was it called? Was it called Never? What was it called?
The Land of Make Believe.
The Land of Make.
Y'all remember more than I remember.
The Fred Rogers documentary, Won't You Be My Neighbor, is my favorite documentary.
Oh, I've never watched
really
that.
good.
Oh my God. So it's on CJ, it's on HBO. Like you can stream it.
Okay, and I'll tell you more about that later. Okay, so in looking at this in my book, which I think when we get together in person, we should invite people to bring books that they like to study or about a deck, especially if I don't own that deck. I'd love to look through that.
Oh yeah, that's
A
fun.
larger version of this to see all the details of his little castle down there and everything is amazing. So a seed drips down on the wind, deposited lightly to the ground. From it, a tree takes root. As the years turn, it grows, a splendor sapling glowing with green life. And the years turn. Grand and stately, it reaches to the sky and challenges the heavens. And the years turn. It is a mighty giant among giants, lovingly crafted living wood and greenery that is nature's masterpiece. Birds come to rest on its glorious limbs, joyous and full of songs inspired by the heart of the sun and the rush of the wind and the endless skies. Men and women come to sleep in its velvety, dappled shade and dream visions of running water and soft, dark loam and home. Even in the depths of winter, so thick and established has its network of branches and foliage become that there is a shelter for any traveler, man or beast, a haven for any who should warily pass by. And the years turn, and it has been forever, established and deep-rooted. Its branches touch the vault of the sky, brushing the stars lightly and caressing the moon as she swings past. Its roots reach into the earth to wrap around the pulsing beat that trembles in the darkness of the deeps. And then with a fickle turn, as easily as she graced this tree with manifold blessings, nature rescinds her gift. She throws a terrible spear from the heavens. What has taken centuries to coax forth from a tiny seed is destroyed in an instant in a deadly arc of blindingly beautiful blazing lightning. It sunders, it sears white hot. It shatters to splinters. The earth shudders at the tremors of the blow. Catastrophe, sudden change, crisis, releasing all emotion, suffering a blow to the ego, revelation, seeing through illusions, a necessary disruption of the status quo, violent, explosive upheaval as the only way to break through long established patterns, fantasies shattered by the harsh and brutal hand of reality, making a clean and utter severing from the past. It is time to re-examine belief structures and opinions. She talks about being inspired by Chinese feng shui lore that tells of the lands being perched along the backs of dragons. So that's where she's getting how she created this. It sets such a fragile and precarious nature to the constructs of humans that at any moment on the whim of nature, on the whim of a dragon, things could change. That by pure chance, deeply slumbering beast could shrug its shoulders in a dream. Perhaps it would waken with a mighty roar and a cascade of dirt and loam in houses. All that we create is but an itch along its spine with an illusion of security and stability. An interesting concept, although it did not make its way to the final sketch. So not sure what she's referring to there. She talks about various combinations of spires and towers sprang up. A city was built in the treetops. The lightning rods spear upward from the branches, but is not enough to deter the bolt that crackles through the dry air and strikes with precision, like a bolt from Zeus's fist. And with the painful randomness of nature, in an instant, devastating fire and this man-made construct of a tower comes tumbling down. We're a tenacious bunch of humans, however painful the catastrophe, it's never the end. What is destroyed gets built anew. It will be stronger and better, perhaps, different, certainly in its myriad of ways. And then she adds in here the children's nursery rhyme, London Bridges comes falling down, my fair lady.
This one, of course, is
Oh,
as above.
Mhm.
It's interesting. It's at night,
Mhm.
right? Because usually we see the daytime, but and it looks like this is a cat who's witnessing
Yeah.
all this. So, CJ, in your reading, was there anything about the juxtaposition of water to the tower? Because a lot of these cards,
no, but that will be very, so if I'm reading with that card, and y'all, I get the irony of when I say things, the irony of that I can't do it for myself, but that would like take care of yourself with your emotions, because this is going to be this is going to hit you emotionally really hard. So if I'm reading from that deck, that may be part of that reading.
be
Yeah.
literally be careful of drowning. Be careful of, yeah,
Getting
In the moment.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but go back, the one in the middle is
No.
as above.
Correct. Yeah.
So this is the spiritual one, correct?
Yeah. And so I think that the cat, as well as the moon that's behind the clouds, that's your representation of hope, right? Or your,
Well, so I guess it's a cat. Before you said cat, I thought
Or
it
a
was a
fox.
fox.
It could be a fox too. Yeah, it could be a fox. It
But
might be a fox.
But I think it's a cat. I think you're right.
Mm.
Well, is the moon potentially, I was thinking, yeah, the hope, that liberation, that stripping away, that moon is the light. That was what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That break in the clouds.
That
Mhm.
little bit of light to guide you in that darkness kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful, Kurt, those decks are amazing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. She put Barbara Moore put a lot of thought into those decks. So this is the Kali page.
Oh.
So
Hello.
and it's interesting to note and that
What is the deck on the left? The one you're pointing
this
at?
is Chrysalis.
Of course it is. Gosh.
So,
Okay.
so Kali's in the skulls right around Kali's neck. Those are the ego. Those represent the ego. So it's the killing of the ego, right? That's what she does. Is she comes in and she kills the ego.
Oscar. Oscar.
And it's also important to note that contextually, Kali burst out of Durga when Durga can't take it anymore, when there's no other recourse, where she just has to completely let loose. And that's when Kali arrives on the scene. And then over here, we have someone having her tower moment. We're having her Kali moment. And she's on the phone and she's dropped her coffee cup and broken it. And she's like cussing somebody out or listening to something that's making her really pissed off.
Yeah, and that pissed off energy went into the coffee cup too, because everything's
Yeah.
red.
Yeah, it's all red and yeah.
That's another card in that deck that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this Chrysalis deck really interests me, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And the term chrysalis, of course, refers to a butterfly cocoon. So it's all about, transformation.
And I'm loving that tower card.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
pretty cool. Yeah. The Chrysalis deck is on Amazon. I believe it's like $30, I think.
That's an expensive deck, Kurt, for Amazon.
Yeah, but it comes with, it comes with the trappings, like a book
the
and
book and the.
yeah. I mean, I can't say anything. I bought a deck for $70 on Amazon. So, I mean,
I'll look it up real quick.
yeah, I think it's like 28 or 30. A lot of decks have actually dropped in price recently. Like over the past couple weeks.
Tabula Mundi, here we go,
So
guys.
to me, of all the cards we're gonna look at, this is the most terrifying to me. Like this is the most like this is a tower moment right here. Like, I mean, the the eagle can't even fly upright. And it's just like, I mean,
Yeah.
this is this. And then of course,
Like Noah's Ark without the water.
Yeah.
oh well, yeah, actually that's a really good, yeah.
Mhm.
And then
27.
27.
2770, and it's the book, it's the deck and book set.
For Chrysalis.
If you
And
just want
that's
the, yeah,
and
so if you just want the deck of cards, it's $20.
Yeah, so you might as well get the book with it.
yeah. So the one in the middle is 911.
Yes, it's
And what deck is that?
that is the crap. I didn't
It's
oh
okay.
yeah, that's the Urban Tarot.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with that at all. Like I don't know anything about it.
Well, I thought I was, but I thought their images were much more simplistic, almost like line drawings. And so I wasn't impressed, but maybe I'm looking at something.
Yeah, I don't know, but I just thought that this was very appropriate.
Well, it is, and she talks about that in 78 Degrees and Tarot Wisdom. She talks about this exact moment and how psychics all over the world and readers all over, in all readings for all people that they were doing collectively after this happened, they got together and talked, and they were all pulling tower cards.
Well, and astrologers for 3 years before were saying that actually the COVID pandemic was we were lucky just to get that. I mean, because astrologically, they were. I mean,
I'm not believing. I still don't believe yet that I believe there's going to be more.
Well, people
not necessarily of COVID per se.
We got past the real hard. I mean, because astrologically we've gotten past the real tough stuff. Like they were, I mean, as astrologers were literally predicting World War III. Like, I mean, big, so, it could have been so much worse.
So is this Rosetta Stone on the right?
Yeah, the Rosetta Tarot. And here we see the dove, the hope.
So I'm wondering, in the Urban Tarot, I'm not seeing the hope unless it's just the light in the background.
I don't think this is not a hopeful.
Okay.
No.
Well, I mean, you could say that the hope is that and again, I mean, really the miraculous aspects of 9/11 is that so many people did survive. So many people died, but so many people also survived based on what. And the buildings actually, when they collapsed straight down. It could have been
right. They could have gone over into other buildings.
Yeah.
Right.
These are really powerful, and I like all the red, and because in a tower moment, you're gonna go through one of those stages of grief in that anger, and I think that's really well represented in the red. Okay, Denise, good. We're going in the right direction here. Am I doing what you want?
Yes.
Okay.
This is just, I mean, there's just so much in this card.
Like that javelina with that, I mean,
yeah.
You can akin it to the dragon in the Rosetta deck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That javelina is
Similar
just,
to-
and then there's this dragon bird thing that's blue on the upper right, about a third of the way down.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Can you
Mhm.
point at it with your cursor? That,
Yeah.
so what is that? Is that a dragon or is that a bird or a sphinx or a phoenix?
It is, and I did not read up on this.
And
but
that
I
is
would
a
ima-
beautiful animal. And there's
would
other
imagine
ones.
it's a
There's
phoenix.
one on the left
And
over
there's
there
one
that's
on the left
red.
too, yeah.
Yeah,
And then you've got this chimera that's here,
right.
What's a
Right.
chimera?
a combination of all kinds of different creatures.
Oh, I
Right.
just thought that was the artistic way of putting it in there. I didn't think they're connected.
No, they are connected. Like, yeah, because the heads are all growing out of.
Yeah, there's this,
central
what is
body.
But I
it?
could do artwork that way and not mean it to be all of the heads coming out of one place. That could just be my
Oh,
way
but
of
she does.
collaging.
I'm quite sure she does.
Oh, okay. And the
That's-
feathers? Oh, they're falling off of the eagle.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
falling off of the eagle. So the eagle
There
is
is not a lightning strike here. There are three.
multiple. Yeah.
Multiple, yeah.
Like, this is a fucking scary moment.
Oh yeah, and then there.
This
yeah.
is a frightening card. Because
And then
there is
what?
no, where's our hope here? Is it the feathers? Where is it?
I think the hope is that the eagle is still airborne.
Still
I mean, it's
airborne?
falling
Okay.
down, but
Isn't completely like on the ground.
The hope
yeah.
is just getting through that moment, like you said,
Yeah.
and that healing. And there is, because there's nothing symbolized in there. No. Mm-mm.
Mm-mm.
Right. I
You just hang
mean,
on.
And not to me in the urban tarot, but in
Yeah.
the Rosetta, she pulls out the dove with the peace
Yeah.
symbol.
yeah.
Very nice, Kurt.
You did a good job there. I like that.
And here we have
Poseidon.
Poseidon.
Can you raise it just so I can see what it says at the bottom?
It just says tower.
Oh,
Or no, it just, yeah.
The tower.
Poseidon.
Poseidon. And of course, if you know, you're familiar with the Greek stories and everything.
No, Oscar.
He is
No.
very moody. Poseidon is quite moody. So him coming to destroy to cause, you know, everything to fall down on a tower. That's very very much like Poseidon. Or if it's not Poseidon, it's one of Poseidon's servants. I'm not sure, but again, we have the tower juxtaposed against water. So I'm wondering, you know, and I think you're probably right. That
It's just the emotional
Yeah.
state that you could be in. And again, here you've got 4 lightning bolts, not
Mhm.
1 in this card.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a tarot tradition that comes from, because this deck tends to be tends to draw upon traditional tarot images.
So this is not a criticism or anything. Is the image on your screen, can you shrink it down so we can see the whole cards, or did you cut off the cards?
I didn't cut off the image. I cut off the border. See, I mean, yeah.
I mean, like, the card on the right is, to me, like a third cut off.
It's not a third cut off. Well, it's the image. You did the most of the image. This is pretty much the totality of the image. There's a couple of astrological symbols that didn't make it on, but all it is it's the zodiac.
But
Right.
is that shrunken down as far as you can shrink it, is my
Oh,
question.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
like-
okay. Okay. So, okay. Thank you, Kurt. Yes, you
My-
did chop off a good deal of that card. That's the only thing. I was just looking at it.
But my point is, I wanted to get all of this one on there because this is my favorite one.
Oh, midway between the autumn equinox and winter solstice.
But this was supposed they she deliberately crafted a positive tower. So the tower is falling and Isis is there to catch it. So you're having your tower moment, right? In the tower, but Isis is there. to
Well, and then she's got a helper down at the bottom
yeah,
and
yeah.
someone up at the top. Who's with her? Do we know?
No, I don't know, but the whole point is that you know, when you have a tower moment, that God or the goddess is there to catch you.
I like that, Kurt.
And then there's a
Well,
lot of
what's the deck on the right with the spiral tower that's like a unicorn
Mhm.
horn?
that is the Arthurian, and I didn't look up anything on that. I just like what I like about that one is the owl.
Mm.
And he's
Um,
got his prey there in his hands.
oh,
his
you're right. I
talent.
didn't even see that. Yeah, you're right.
It's about the details.
And so that is, and that is the tower moment for that mouse.
Yeah.
That is
But with it comes wisdom of the owl.
right. And then of course the zodiac.
And then look at, so you've got your quote spiral tower over there, but the actual little tower in front of it, like is being hit by lightning, and then it's crumbling apart. But if you go up the spiral, it's like the magic little sparklies that are magical, like like I actually experienced that. So there's your hope there.
Yeah. Cool. And then we're moving into this one is the middle one is Pollux, and then we have two Star Wars ones.
Oh, fun.
Oh my God.
There's your favorite Kylo Ren and
Wow.
Mm.
Wow, those are really cool, Kurt.
Those are
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Who's that on the left? Do we know?
That's the Emperor.
The Emperor.
Remember when Darth Vader throws him down the shaft in Empire Return of the Jedi?
I've slept a lot since then, Kurt.
Yeah.
Wow. Is the one on the right that the same deck of that one I like before? So I can't even find that deck online, you guys.
I can find all the images of it, but at least the major arcana, but of course you can't buy it anywhere. It would be
just because it's out of print or what?
No, it's be technically illegal to sell because the people don't
copyrighted.
Yeah, people don't have Disney's permission to.
But that's an artist's interpretation of something.
Disney would have probably a lot to say about that. They could do it they could do it so long as they didn't put the name Star Wars on it.
Right.
Once they have the name Star Wars on it, then it becomes.
So I would choose not to put Star Wars on it.
Yeah.
These are great, Kurt. And so Pollux is in the middle. And in this reading today, I didn't read anything of her talking about what she did in her card. Sometimes she addresses.
Sometimes she goes really into it. Yeah.
Sometimes she addresses her own card, but I'm in Tarot Wisdom right now, and I don't remember anything.
Well, you have a lot of the elements that you've been pointing out. Like you've got the multiple lightning bolts.
Well, I only see two.
There's two, right?
Okay.
And then there's this blue triangle, which I'm assuming is water or relating to the emotions. But interestingly, there's like a figure that's looking up. And then I guess
and so I'm going to take Denise's go through the tower. Like maybe this figure, instead of plummeting to their demise, is accepting almost, and like,
well, actually,
a willingness to be burnished in the fire of the moment.
I think you're right, because the tower is not crumbling.
Right.
Like, Yeah, no, I
It is
think,
on fire and she is being
Uh-huh.
struck by lightning.
yeah. Is she, and here too, though, is she being struck by lightning or is the lightning coming out of her eyes? So that's another way to look at it. Like, and like these are like God figures or something, and they're,
Well, so to me, I saw them as palm trees, but there's three of them,
or maybe they are palm trees.
and then there's a triangle at the bottom, and then
Yeah.
there's three circle things inside the triangle at the top.
Mm-hmm. And they co-
So there's definitely a triune thing going on here.
and the colors kind of correspond, and colors course on the tower correspond with these.
Right.
And then here you've got, looks like different emotions.
Yeah, that almost looked like sigils or
Yeah.
runic system, but I'm not sure what she was saying there. And I'm sure it's all very specific.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I don't think it's like super negative. Like that's, I think you're right. I think it's,
I think this card shows a willingness and readiness to move through this, and there's an acceptance there.
mhm.
And then if you look at the figure that's in the pool of water, so to speak, I've seen figures like this used in different marketing for different, like a
Uh-huh.
private school downtown, different things like that. It's a very joyous, we're praising the universe, God, the divine, oh great spirit. We could even be singing the little three things coming out of the head. There's that's a very joyous figure. So there's, in that card is your hope. It's a very bright, brilliant card. And the white background lends itself to a lightness of the joy
Mhm.
that could be had if you can just get through the moment.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, let me see what she says. I'm gonna see.
That's cool. I would appreciate that.
I'm gonna look it up. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna see how close we are.
Libby, are you cooking? What kind of cookie or two?
I'm making my own recipe.
Oh. Does that mean I get a cookie or a half?
Okay. She shouts with the thunder. She dances in the fire. She grabs hold of the dirt. Traditionally, this trump shows two people thrown from a tower destroyed by lightning. Here we see an image of ecstasy with a dancer on the top of the tower and a shining vision glyph in the earth below. The two figures above and below restore the balance of inner truth and outer experience. The arms of the shining vision glyph reach into darkness, for we have faced the depths of the devil. The card shows an upheaval. Lightning strikes the tower, even the dancer. The tower burns. The stars are rough, irregular, with geometric faces inside, recalling the faces of injustice. At the end of the final line, shining woman will shine so freely because she has faced her own devil and burned it up in the tower. Revelation
Burnishing it. Okay. I'm sorry.
Revelation does not come gently, nor does the masked high priestess melt gradually away. The Christian Bible tells of Paul struck by lightning on the road to Damascus and how it changed him utterly. From Tibet, we hear stories of disciples meditating for years only to receive enlightenment when struck on the head by their teacher. The Buddha studied and meditated for many years only to experience freedom from illusion all at once as he sat under the ancient tree. While the flames rise up to the spirit world, the blue triangle points down into the unconscious. At the same time, the symbols within that triangle speak of uniting the different worlds. Shining vision is essentially a symbol of the unconscious. The three roundels, inspired by Australian Aboriginal painting, here symbolize three states of being: our existence before birth, our life in this world, and our souls after death. The red lines connecting them are blood rivers, the birth and death. The ladders leading to the stars are a common shamanistic image. Shamans sometimes will carry actual ladders, which they will symbolically mount to heaven during their ecstatic trances. The stars and faces emerging from them point to the next card and beyond to new consciousness. 16 reduces to 1 plus 6 equals 7, the chariot. The chariot carries the quality of human speech, which allows us to construct the world and self as masks. Here we see God's speech, the lightning of revelation. Knowledge of God goes beyond human language, which is bound to culture. Pentecostal Christians and others around the world speak in tongues, a series of sounds that outsiders dismiss as meaningless noise, but actually have a structure and rhythm. Shamans often will speak to God in a language unknown to their tribe. All these positive meanings counter the usual view of the tower as destruction and the end of some bad situation. That meaning, many associate the tower with the biblical Tower of Babel. The people attempted to build the tower to heaven. God not only struck them down, but confused their language so they could no longer work together. Outside the tower, that is, the ordinary world of human experience, does not speak to us directly, but through stories and images, we see picture writing on the sides of the hill, see the knower of birds for the creation of writing out images and prophecy. On the left, the writing forms actual sentences. The sentences are vertical. The left column reads, "Blessed is the mother who has given us shape, physical existence." The middle reads, "Blessed is the breath of her sky, our own breath that keeps us alive." And the right, "Blessed is the beat of her earth, the pulse of nature." The glyphs on the right of the triangle form a progression of ideas. The top image represents the underlying patterns of existence. The second, a tree of life, indicates cosmos in all its wondrous harmony. The eye symbolizes revelation, while the hand signifies action. Divinatory meanings: upheaval, breakthroughs, revelation, dramatic possibility, violent change, overwhelming or ecstatic experience, important discoveries. Reversed: less extreme change, resisting a breakthrough, holding on to old structures, fear of discovering unpleasant things, difficulties for people communicating or working together.
Go back to the second sentence you read, something that said inner truth and outer blank.
Here we see an image of ecstasy with a dancer on top of the tower, a shining vision glyph in the earth below. The two figures okay, here we go. The two figures above and below restore balance of inner truth and outer experience.
Thank you. So basically what you just read was pretty much like half of the chapter in Tarot Wisdom.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
And you know, your assessment of the card was pretty close.
But I love the stars with ladders. I didn't know any of that.
Yeah, I would have got palm trees too.
Yeah.
But I
or
can tell, like when you said the first
Yeah,
time
it
you
do-
referenced stars, you hadn't gotten
Yeah.
to the ladder part, and I was like, those are ladders to get to the stars.
Yep.
And I'm thinking about connecting with the divine and Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you have the Trinity in the heavens here, and the Trinity
In your life
in
cycle.
subconscious. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So
And
as
I
it-
liked reading the hieroglyphs with you as you read them.
Yes.
and so you have as above, so below.
Go below.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Thank you, Kurt. Oh, is that it?
That's it.
Oh, wow.
That was
That-
really fun.
That was the most cards that I've ever put in one of that was 8 pages of
You've done that before.
I've done 8 pages. Yeah, there's a lot. There was a lot of tower images out there. Well, okay, folks, we're going to conclude our recording for the evening. Does anybody have any closing remarks on the tower?
No.
No.
Nothing
All right.
profound. Bye.
And stop.